I'm Lisa DeSisto. I'm the publisher of the Portland Press Herald, and special welcome to all of our subscribers. Heck, that's right. And all of our future subscribers, which would be the non-subscribers. So please support us, and thank you for coming tonight. So I first learned about Zach Fowler in the Portland Press Herald when I read that he had won the season on alone and had won $500,000. So of course we're dying to figure out what he's done with the money. And so we immediately started binge watching the show, and I felt a little bad because he was starving, and my kids going, "Mom, get more ice cream. I want one more fudgicle." And we were just nice and warm with blankets, and there he is, cold and hungry. But hey, he got $500 grand. So we're excited about that, and I can't wait to bring him. Oh, there he is, right there. Woo! And I can't wait to bring him up along with Jim Patrick, who's our social media editor, and he is going to interview Zach tonight. But first, I would like to thank our sponsors. I'd like to start by thanking our in-kind sponsors, the Press Hotel, and also Hub Furniture. I bet Zach would have liked one of those nice chairs in his shelter in Patagonia. I would also like to thank Portland Downtown. They're a nonprofit business improvement district established in 1992. Casey Gilbert, their director, is here tonight somewhere. And their core mission is to keep downtown clean, safe, and while promoting the downtown as a vibrant business, residential, and tourist destination. They bring you the summer cadet program and the tree lighting in Monument Square, and you can find out more about them at portlanddowntown.com. And then now I'd like to thank our two series sponsors. The first is AAA Travel, and the Cunard line has operated a number of gorgeous ships for over 175 years, experienced the elegance and style of the illustrious British traditions, and share the storied legacy of royalty, celebrity, and history with a voyage on one of the three queens of the Cunard, the Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Victoria, and the Queen Mary II. Doesn't that sound lovely? It does, yes. So AAA Travel and their team with so many leisure travel agents located in Maine and New Hampshire can hook you up on one of those awesome ships. So make that happen. Thank you to AAA. And a new sponsor I would like to welcome, and that's Stroudwater Lodge. I think Catherine Studley and Courtney Freeman are here from Stroudwater. And they are an independent and assisted living community located just minutes from downtown Portland. Residents love the spirit of the lodge by enjoying the privacy of their own apartment and all the benefits of a full-service community with easy access to dining, entertainment, and shopping. And it's just a stone's throw away from the sister community of Avita of Stroudwater, which focuses on memory care. I had an opportunity to tour the lodge just last week. I can tell you it's just such a great main space with lots of community space, a big stone fireplace, and a full variety of activities to participate in throughout the day. So it's really a special place. Please, if you have a chance to check it out, you should. And finally, I would like to thank our presenting sponsor, H.M. Payson, now with us in the second season of Maine Voices Live. They have gifted you those lovely bags, which are yours to take home. And if there's an empty seat, you should take home too. We thank you to H.M. Payson, Tim Griffin, Bob Davis, and Chip Weichert are all here tonight. I believe they're in the front row. See, when you're a sponsor, you get preferred seating, which is awesome. So what can I tell you about H.M. Payson? They were founded on integrity in 1854. That was many years ago. That was before the Press Herald was founded. I always like to make that connection. And they're one of the last standing independent investment managers in the U.S. Their core competencies include investment management, trusts, and wealth planning. And their fully integrated team approach delivers transparent and conflict-free advice with solution-oriented client service and peace of mind. They are active philanthropists in the community. You see the H.M. Payson brand on so many things, whether it's arts, culture, education, or the environment, and of course, Maine Voices Live. So thank you to H.M. Payson and to all of our sponsors tonight. And now it's time for the show. Let me start by telling you a little bit about Jim Patrick. He is our resident chatterbox and amateur outdoorsman, and he is the Swiss Army knife of our staff, handling the Press Herald's Facebook and Twitter feeds by day and writing A1 stories about beer by night. So if you've noticed, our Facebook feed has gotten a little cheeky, a little irreverent when appropriate. That is all Jim's work. He's a skier, a hiker, and he recently slept under a tree outside the Savannah, Georgia airport. And tonight he'll lead the conversation with Zach. So now Zach Fowler, like Cher, has dropped his name and is just known now as Fowler. So get that right. He prefers to be called just Fowler, and he is a busy man. You could see that on the TV show Alone, where Fowler was constantly building gadgets, crafting things to keep his mind busy, while he spent 87 days surviving alone in Patagonia. Since he won the $500,000 prize, he's gotten even busier. He's appeared in a pickup truck commercial, started a YouTube channel, selling T-shirts and his signature slingshot on his website, and it shows around the U.S. We are thankful he could take a break from his busy schedule to join us tonight. Let's see a few outtakes of Alone before we bring them up.
Can you move the banner?
Yes.
This is me. No, look at the lens. Not look at it.
Thank you.
Third day or the fourth day. This is me. On the third morning. That's all you get.
That's all you do.
Please welcome to the stage Fowler and Jim Patrick.
I'm not sure that you even need me to be here. You've got the staff, which has your story of your time in Patagonia. But just in case, I'm going to fill some people in on who we're dealing with here and what we're talking about. I know there's some people here that haven't seen the show, so I just wanted to give everybody a primer. This is a reality show that we're talking about. However, it's not a reality show like Survivor, where you're in direct competition with people. You are isolated. You are literally alone. These competitors on the show Zach was on were basically camping, and they were filming themselves with camcorders. They were having conversations with their camcorders. And the only human interactions were medical checks, which I believe, were those weekly medical checks?
Even further between. Yeah.
Okay. So let's just dive in. Zach was accepted onto the show. He was told 3.5 weeks before departure to Argentina that you're going to go camp in Argentina for could be a while, and you have 3.5 weeks to prep. Zach, you had 10 items to bring with you. How did you pick those 10 items? And I have to ask this part because Lisa wants this part asked. What is the 11th thing that you would have brought that you didn't bring?
Well, I found out, 3 weeks. I mean, we went to a boot camp, and it was like we had 3 weeks to get ready. And that's not a lot of time to pick out the stuff that you're going to live with, possibly for a year is what I thought, it might take. And so in the end, I got them all here on this is my wizard staff I called. And if you've seen the show, you've seen it. It's my whole story of my time there. And it starts at the top with the fish head. We'll get to that later. And then my 10 items. So I had the slingshot. I chose that because I watched all these survival shows, and I thought the slingshot instead of a bow might actually bring something home a little bit at a time. The fishing line and hooks, the shovel so I could dig grubs and worms, and as well as it was a sharpened shovel so I could use that for cutting down trees and making small things for my shelter. And paracord, pot with a pan lid, a really cheap Coleman sleeping bag because I had already spent all my money on nicer, warmer clothes, and
they made you pay for your own stuff?
Yeah, oh yeah,
Wow.
yeah. You have to pay for all your own stuff,
Okay.
and it had to be top secret. So it's like I can't go around and be like, "Hey, LL Bean, I'm going on this show. I'm going to be super famous someday. You want to hook me up with some duds, and so you got to be quiet about it. So it's all up to you, But my family, secretively, not knowing, not really, but hooked me up, lent me some money so I could get some nice stuff. And so I got the ferro rod, which is a fire starter, multi-tool, which is like already that's 3 things that other people would never have chose. You know, nobody's ever chose a multi-tool, a shovel, or a slingshot for a show like this. And so that was talked about a whole lot before the show. And then the axe and the saw. And I got the last of my items like the day before we left. And the day before that, it was from Amazon, and it was my boots, and they were the wrong boots. And they didn't have any liners in them. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. You know, I just spent $250 on a pair of boots, and it didn't even come with a liner. You know, and so I sent them a message, and they're like, we'll get it there tomorrow, I promise, you know. Sure enough, it showed up, and they were the worst boots I ever. Just in case you ever buy Sorel's Adventure boots, they were
Off Amazon.
They weigh a ton, and
they're not a sponsor of ours.
No, yeah. Thank goodness, man. There goes my brand deal.
So you're running out the door. I mean, I know the rest of this story, but I'm already smiling as I'm telling it. But you know, you're going crazy trying to get out of town. He's got 2 young children at home. He's got a wife at home. They're living in a 12-foot yurt in northern Maine, Searsmont area. You know,
Appleton. Yeah.
Appleton,
yeah.
Sure. So he's going crazy, and then tell everybody about what happened on your way to the airport here at Portland Jetport.
Yeah. So you know, we only had a little bit of time. We go to the airport. I made my last stop and bought my last piece of clothes that I wanted at L. Bean, like one more vest so that I'd have everything I needed. And we're driving down. We just got back on the road in Freeport, and we don't got much time, and the car breaks down. And it's right here on my story pole. That's like that's the first part of my adventure where it kind of begins as far as the carvings. And it's the car with the smoke coming out of it. It turns out it was just a leaf in the air filter, but Jamie, being the trooper she is and smart, and I'm all frantic, she jumps out with the baby and sticks her thumb out, you know? So she's got our 1-year-old daughter, who's actually just about to turn 1 like 3 days after I leave, and sticks her thumb out, and somebody in a Subaru, I wish I could remember their names, they were so nice, and they pull over, and they give me a ride to the airport. She's stuffing the baby through the window for one more last kiss goodbye. And I ran over and kissed Abby in the car and said goodbye, and my wife, and it's like, and I was off to the airport, you know. It would have only been 30 minutes later I said goodbye to him, but you have that was 30 more minutes to prepare your heart to say goodbye to him, you know, and I only had a couple seconds.
And you were doing the show for them.
Yeah.
You talked about that before, you know, you wanted to win,
Well, yeah, we lived in a 12-foot yurt. I mean, need I say more?
Motivation.
I mean,
That's
motivation. She told me don't come home, you know. Unless, obviously, but I mean.
I was going to make a joke about my own wife, but saying something similar, but we'll leave it right there. So the one item that you couldn't bring is actually what you're sort of holding right there, isn't it? Was it?
Yeah, okay, yeah, my 11th item.
Yeah.
Well, I almost had an 11th item, right, you know, because I had a backup ration of overweight, a little bit extra weight there I'd been building up over the years. But then I wanted to bring a journal, and I actually asked if I could bring, because I love getting up in the morning really early and journaling and mostly drawing like traps and designs and different things like that, and whatever suits my fancy. And I wanted a journal so bad, you know, to be able to record my adventure. But they want our camera to be our journal, so they want you to talk to it whenever you have your whatever you would have written down normally. Wouldn't be very much fun if you're just sitting there on the TV show drawing and sketchbook the whole time. And so that's where this kind of came into it, you know. Around day 27, I came up with the idea, and I was like, I could make a story stick, and I called it my wizard staff. So.
And at the end, if you guys want to come up and take a look at the staff, it is impressive. He's notched fish that he caught. He's notched. There's all kinds of stories, things that happened. Your shoes going in the fire. We're gonna get there. Don't go there yet.
Yeah.
You got to keep us on track here.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of stories. You're welcome to come up after the show. Check it out. Also, he's got some of the tools that he crafted. He's got some of the items that he brought to Patagonia with him. So to fast forward here, he had a dramatic trip to the airport. He's off to about 43 degrees south, which is pretty similar to where Maine sits. He's off to Patagonia, and you get there and they're taking people by helicopter one at a time off to their sites. And at that point, you're pretty antsy, you're eager to get out there, and all of a sudden, you know what happens. They drop you off outside of this lake in the mountains. It's, the beginning of winter, the end of fall out there?
Well, because I left here last year about a week and a half ago. And so it was just getting warm here. It was just getting nice. One day you go out and it's sunny and beautiful, and then I'm down there in Patagonia and it's cold and frozen in the morning. So this is my first summer. Every day is a year and a half since I've seen a summer. This is the first time. Every day is the longest day of the year that I've been through in over a year and a half. The sunniest day. It's minus today, but so. You get down there and it's late fall, and which is my favorite time of year. So I was actually pretty happy about that until they dropped me and I found that my place was going to be late fall all the time and it would never be summer because there was no sun.
Right. It seemed like it was always raining in the episodes I looked at.
It sprinkled for that first month like every morning until noon. But the worst part was I was on the south side down there, which is like being on the north side of a mountain up here. So there was no direct sunlight except for 5 or 6 times randomly. I managed to find a spot where the light came through in a beam of light and I'd run over and stand in it and just be like, thank you, God. And I was just like, it was all I had for the whole time I was there.
So I know you've talked about this a million times, but we got to go. So you couldn't have a journal. You didn't have the staff yet. What happened? What developed in those first few days? It was obvious that you had a relationship with the camera right off the bat.
Yeah. The camera became my Wilson. It was like the only time I ever really felt super alone was like around day 20. I'm up over the hill and I'm working on my shelter because I realized early on with a dark spot down below where they dropped me off, I had to go 8 stories up to find a place that was safe from the high water that might flood when the mountains melt. And it was the only place that had enough ambient light that I wasn't in just complete shadow all the time. And I'm up there and the camera battery dies. And I was like, this is one of those moments where you kind of wish you had yourself on film. They would have loved the drama of me feeling so alone, That was the whole point of the show. And yet, the camera became my friend so quickly that I spent all my time talking to it. And I was like, hey, it's Future America. Hey, how's it going, Future America, this morning? And
well, and just even there in the clip with you playing with your suspenders, what else are you going to do?
That wasn't supposed to be on the show. That was supposed to be, they wanted us to go out there and, and like say what day it was. So when they looked at the footage, they knew, like for a log-wise, where it was at. And I did not see that coming. There was a couple of footages, like spots like that too, where I'm like looking, I'm like, man, I got wrinkles. I'm not that, when did I get wrinkles? I lost so much weight. I got crow's feet. And
But then you told me earlier that just shows how real the show was, right?
Exactly. I think it's the most real reality show ever because you spend so much time out there. I had 87 days out there surviving, so it's like you forget that there's nothing scripted, and it just catches every crazy moment that you have, and you don't hide it from the camera. You stop becoming shy from the camera like a day in,
So let's dive in. You're in Patagonia. You're at your campsite. Well, you're at your second campsite, really, because you went up the hill.
Yeah.
You developed a routine pretty quickly, right? Like you were fishing, but you're using the net there. You had a gizmo that you built. How quickly did you develop a rapport, a plan for each day? Rapport is the wrong word, but normally in an interview you would just say the wrong word and go with it. But I'm not used to being in front of people when I work.
It was kind of the whole thing. I feel in my mind kind of breaks down into like 3 separate parts. That first month I was building my shelter up over the hill, and so I would get up in the morning, get my fire going. I'd check my fish lines. At that point I was catching almost a fish a day. We had 25 hooks. And one of them I brought was a sewing needle, so I only had 24 hooks, and I put them in the water, and I baited them every morning and every evening so I'd catch as many fish as possible. And so I'd be going up over the hill to my shelter, and that's where I made the water bottle here so I could bring some fresh water with me while I was working on my shelter. And I spent like 4 hours a day up there working on my shelter, filming it, stripping the bamboo, and I made this double thick walled bamboo, just like almost like at home, but had this giant tree there. The trees were 200 feet tall and like 6 to 10 feet around. And that one I built it into the back of my shelter as like a thermal mass. So I spent a month, building this, and which was hard because when you watch it on TV later, people are like, what is he doing for so long? He doesn't have a shelter. He's gonna die, People are like, well, this guy's an idiot, and then they see it finished and they're like, oh, he's a genius. This is a palace. He didn't go out and build a shelter, he built a home. And that was my whole point of being, it's like I was gonna go out there and I was gonna homestead the situation. So I wanted to make myself as comfortable as possible. My knack as I think of it, is to be able to make stuff from what I see around me. I look at something and I see what it can be and its possibility. And so I went out there and I made myself comfortable.
Well, and to that end, you were catching fish, like you say, almost every day. But I love this detail. I asked you, tell people how many raw fish that you ate while you were down there.
Raw?
Yeah.
None.
Right.
None, yeah.
Because
No.
what would you do with it?
Oh, every day I'd catch a fish, and it didn't matter how hungry I was, because there was some days I'd have to go 2 days without a fish, and I had the fish heads, and I would smoke them, so that they were ready and they were preserved. So every day, that's why the fish head's on top. I'd have fish head soup 3 times a day. Boil it, mash it, stick it in a stew, drink it down 3 times a day, so I get the electrolytes and the nutrients from all the bones. But the rest of the fish I would take and I'd set it out of the fire. It didn't matter how hungry I was, 4 to 6 hours. I'd joke to the camera, I'd be like, on Iron Chef today, we were gonna smoke our fish for 6 hours. And then we get the hot coals and we rake them out and we pan sear it on both sides till it comes to a delicious crisp flavor. And they were the best fish. Every meal was the best meal I ever had, because they were like these pink trout that was like the duck trap salmon here. And they just melt in your mouth. They were so good.
It's funny too, because you watch the other contestants on the show and they're literally eating raw fish at pretty early stage. Like, they just didn't care. But as a true Mainer, you wanted the herbs and 6 to 8 hours of smoking.
It was all about the creature comforts of home.
Yeah.
It was like,
how similar was it to Maine in that there were mountains, there was ocean, the temperature looked something like we would be familiar with?
it was very similar, because it was weird, because they fly us over those glaciers, and I had never seen a glacier before in my life. I've seen snowfields up at Killington, but like this was like giant chunks of ice on the tops of these mountains that are crumbling and just crazy. And they bring us into this lake way up on top of the mountain, and then they bring us into this forest that's like a rainforest with bamboo and 200-foot tall trees. But then the climate was like Maine 2 years ago, where it was like, it would, the first month it would rain in the mornings, and then it would be misty, and then it would be nicer and kind of semi-muggy in the afternoon. The middle month was frozen the whole time, and the last month it would snow and then rain off. So it was like, it was very similar to Maine, like by Camden Shore, like.
Yeah, nothing you hadn't,
Yeah,
nothing
it was.
You weren't
Made it feel
prepared
like
for.
home a little bit.
Yeah. So let's talk about the tools a little bit here, because I want people to get a chance to see some of them. And what I think is the coolest one, why don't you talk about that axe?
shovel?
I call it the axe shovel.
The axe shovel?
Yeah.
This is the Spetsnaz cold steel shovel.
A Russian shovel, right?
It's a Russian, yeah. Their special forces had come up with this in like World War I, and it was sharpened on all edges, so it allowed them to fight, and it also allowed them to dig trenches. And nobody's ever picked something like this for a survival show. And in fact, that was one other big thing when I'm watching the show. I'm watching all these people going on Reddit, and just like, oh man, what an idiot. He wasted a tool, and like, what would you use a shovel for? Like, oh, he's got to dig a latrine? It's so ridiculous, It's like, you're gonna waste all these calories. In the end, I used it to dig 150 steps to get over this hillside, 8 stories up, to build my shelter there, because I didn't want to just fall off the hillside when it was icy and snowy. And I dug every day a little bit, doing odds and ends, and I'd be able to get all the worms, and I could bait all my hooks, which meant that I caught more than twice as many fish as everybody else that went out there. So I came out a lot stronger than I went in. And it was just a great tool. I could use it to cut the bamboo.
Well, and I don't know if people in the front row can probably see it, but I can see the edge from here. That sucker's sharp, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Wait,
And it was it was kind of my entertainment.
your signature move.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So there's this tree, there's a big dead tree in front of my shelter, and I made a little circle with an X in the middle, and I pretended I was like, how famous could I be? Can I get in Walking Dead after this? So I'd pretend like I'm saving Rick and those guys in Walking Dead, and I'd like dodge around, zombie, and then throw it at the tree and get it to stick in. And so by the time I left, I could pretty much stick that, right in the center every time from almost any distance. It was.
And they love showing it over and over
Yeah,
again, too.
see, just randomly, if the show's about to end and I hadn't even been on that one episode, and all of a sudden, thunk, and you hear me. And the funny part is when we viewed the show at Thresher's Brewery, and we're sitting there, and it goes thunk, and it sticks in the tree, and I laughed in stereo with my own same laugh on the show, and everybody was like, "Son, it was so funny,"
We could spend all night here, probably.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there. So tell me, you've got all these tools, but you still had spare time, so you started whittling while you were out there?
Oh, yeah.
You guys might have caught on. He's got an active brain. You're always going, you're always thinking, and you can't read a book or there's no other entertainment. So then you started making these spoons, utensils?
That was part of my survival technique, was to keep myself busy, keep your mind busy, So by keeping my hands busy carving, I made over 200 sets of spoons and spatulas for Christmas presents. And I didn't use a single one of them, not even once. I made 200 sets of chopsticks. What you see here is just a quarter of what I made, just that I'm going to keep on what I call my old man shelf as memorabilia. And it was just to keep myself busy, so that I didn't get bored. And the other part of keeping myself busy was storytelling,
To yourself?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. That was the one time I actually didn't
options?
talk to the camera. I kept telling the camera what I was thinking. I wrote a whole book about space wizards in my mind, to keep myself entertained. And I'd have it sounds like I'm crazy, but you got to keep yourself busy. You've been out there for a month. It's I started thinking what else am I going to do with myself? And so I started telling the story, and I had these wizards and the dwarves, and we had this airship, and it's going across this ocean. And they're like, we didn't stop and pick up the tracker lady. And the wizard's like, I'm out of here, not the witch. He tries to jump over the side of the boat, and the apprentice is like, what witch? And the dwarf's like, it's not a witch, it's his ex-wife. And so I'm laughing and the camera's still filming me, because I filmed every minute, and I'm had to explain it to the camera so the people that are editing didn't think I was completely nuts and pull me, And,
All right, I have a total change of topic for you. What is it like to go 87 days without the use of toilet paper?
It's actually not that bad, because the moss it's
Soft?
Yeah, it's soft. It's like Charmin. Yeah.
But that was really, so I was leading into one of the two problems that you ran into there. Excuse me. The first one was the first couple weeks. Just talk about the adjustment period you had there.
Oh man, yeah. Because before I left, I couldn't have any dairy, and they thought I had Lyme disease 2 years earlier. So I had been on a cycle of the medicine. It turned out it wasn't that, and by the time we figured out what it was, I had been on 3 cycles of antibiotics. Messed my stomach all up. So I started gaining a lot of weight over the last 2 years. So when I went on the show, I weighed 223. I lost 73 pounds when I was out there. But in that first 12 days, I used up all the moss on all the trees as toilet paper. I had to climb the trees to get more moss, and it was bad. And then all of a sudden, day 13 came, and I was all better. And I started gaining in energy and strength like I had never felt I had even had for years. I was a teenager again.
Well, and this, I want to point out to people, this is a behind-the-scenes thing. You didn't talk about this on the show, right?
No, I didn't share this with them before they accepted me for the show, because I didn't want to not get on the show, as a medical issue or something. I wasn't sure how much they would, I was like, I'm going to either tough it out or I won't,
Right. So tell I don't remember what you called it exactly. The worst day ever? The day 57, was it?
No, it was around day 70 something, I think.
When you almost caught fire?
Yeah, you see it on the second to last episode if you've seen the show, and they show me. They make it look like that whole last period of my time there was very, very difficult, but it was day 72. And I could find it right on here and pretty much tell you. And there's a negative symbol on my thing. It was the only day I considered my negative day, because every day I had 6 symbols here. So I had what I achieved for the day, how many fish I caught, what day of the week it was, whether I kept my fire going that day, because I kept it going for 50 days straight at one point, my physical state and my emotional state. And so that day, I'm down there, I tried to catch a fish, and the fish fell off the end of the line because they were tangled, and when I lifted it up, which I shouldn't have, but I was already tired and hungry, just got worse and worse, and the only time I ever lost it out there, it was my only bad day, and then it just got worse. I couldn't get a fire going down below, and then when I went back up, I tripped, and I think I bumped my knee, and my feet were wet, and so I got back up there, and I'm having a fire, and I'm just like this, I'm just kind of complaining to myself more. I don't have anything to eat. I'm boiling the fish head soup, and I'm drinking that for the 10th time. I mean, it gets pretty boring after that, and after 5 times even. And I smell this burning smell in the fire, and I'm like, why is there plastic burning? It's like I didn't throw any 2x4s in there with something stuck to it. Patagonia. It's not a bonfire in my backyard. And I'm like, what is that smell? And I look over the log that's in there, and I look down, and there's my boot. It's in the fire. The insert had slipped off the side, and it burnt the end of it off. And I was like, oh, this is miserable, you know? And I stayed up till like 2 in the morning taking a piece of leather I had brought on my saw sheath, which was pretty much just so I'd have the resource. I never used this sheath again. But this is where that 25th fishing hook, which I actually brought, was a sewing needle instead, and they said it was an acceptable hack. And I was able to use the paracord and sew that back on there. And I still wear it to this day because it was more than just, it wasn't just a random bad day. Somewhere along the way, I had been getting tired and I hadn't been putting my full effort in. And I said on the show, I can't wait for everybody else to quit so I can go, so it can be over. And I realized that that's not a winning strategy and that there's no way I'm gonna win if I'm just waiting for everybody else to quit. And that next morning, I got up and I rededicated myself to the whole thing. And I said, I'm gonna put in my full effort. I'm never gonna put off till tomorrow what I can do today. I'm gonna get it done. And at that point on, I only caught like 4 more fish or 3 more fish. And it became like 10 times harder, but I had a good time. And I wasn't ready to go when they came for me in the end. Good.
So you had to be getting pretty hungry out there. You had to know, Fowler knew that, and I just call him Fowler because that's what he wants to be called, that the previous 2 shows hadn't gone nearly this long. The previous 2 shows had ended after, what, 47 and 60-something days? So you knew, you're in the 70s, then you're in the 80s, you're way past where any show has ended before. And then they come by to do a medical check on you. And then they come back the next day. So talk a little bit about your emotions and tell us about how things wrapped up there and what your mental state was as the show was wrapping up. I mean, you obviously didn't know it was wrapping up.
Yeah, I mean, I'd been keeping busy. I built a duck boat that, I turned into a primitive fishing trap that paddled its way out into the water. I mean, this.
Yeah, let's show that. I got way ahead of myself.
Yeah,
I skipped the duck trap.
Initially, it was like this. It was like this little teeny boat that my dad had taught me to make. And it would paddle out into the water and do my fishing for me. It had a little primitive like ice fishing trap that would snare the fish with the hook. And the Mark I had a propeller on it like this that was driven by my rubber bands. Mm-hmm. So then at the end, when I had made up my mind to keep going, I took it out of the water and I remodeled it with this idea I had come up with for an actual propeller on it. And you see it on the show, but it doesn't show it in detail. I had footage even of the prop wash and the bubbles coming off of this underwater as it motored out there about 30 feet. And it would sit there and do my fishing for me and catch fish and then be motoring back and forth out in the water, and I'd haul it in on its trailing line.
We should also, in fairness, mention to people that he used to build boats in Maine. So this is not that far off.
Everybody thought I'd go out there and build a big boat, and I got out there and everything was rotten and the bamboo wasn't hollow, so it would sink right to the bottom. So that became a non-starter real quick.
Right. So then, you've got all your gadgets. You've got 200 and...
Kept myself busy.
Yep.
I got all my gadgets, and I started catching fish again because the storm let up after that last, 14 days of being semi-tough. The fish head soup kept me alive because it was, I still had like 5 fish heads going into that end of those last days, so I had fresh broth every day. So I was feeling hungry, but I wasn't miserable.
Right.
And they come and see me the day before on day 86, and they said I was okay, medical check was all over, and they went away. And the next morning they show up again, and I said, oh no, that's it, it's over, because I hadn't changed or taken off my clothes in months because it was so cold, and in your shelter, I'd strip down to my long johns and go to bed and get back up and just keep going on with my day. There wasn't much I could do about it. The water was so cold. There wasn't any easy way to clean up. And it was like, I didn't know, I knew I lost a lot of weight, but I didn't know how much. And proportionately, I felt like I was just as strong. And they're there, and they all have these somber faces on, like, it's over. And I'm like, I know it's over. They're gonna pull me, it's all over. They said at the beginning, if you lose too much weight or if you're unhealthy and you fail the medical check, and I must have failed the medical check, they're here to take me home. They have me standing there with my back to my trail down to the water, and they got me talking about my family. They got me crying. You know, I miss my family, but I'll never give up as long as I have the strength to go on. And I have the strength to go on. And I'm ready for them to tell me that they're pulling me. And I was going to be like, look, I still got a little bit of, there's something here.
Yeah, right.
I got a little bit right here. Look, just look at it. I'm still good to go, you know? And my wife sneaks up behind me and she grabs me from behind. And I turn around and it's her. And she says, it's over. It's over. You can come home now. You out-stubborned them all. And I was so happy to see her. I just said, I don't even care. I'm just happy to see you. So.
Well, and then you guys went back to the camp, the staging camp. You had fabulous dinner prepared for you, right? There was a chef.
Well, not really.
No?
No, there was a chef and everything, and everybody was eating like roast beef and like all the wonderful things, and like they're like, here you go. Here's a little tomato slice and some rice and some broth, and I'm like, what is this? You know. I was like, I'm starving. I want I want a pint, a lager, and I want a steak, rare, and they're like, no, you can't have too much because like a Holocaust victim, you have lost so much insulative fat on your organs. If you have too much to eat, if you have too much sugar or too much of the wrong thing, you can go into shock and you could die and you could organ failure. And I'm like, so I spent the next week reacclimating to food again. And the first thing I got to eat that was my choice was when we got back home here to Maine. And we came up with the camera crew to my house and get to see my daughters again, because Jamie had visited, but the kids stayed here. And they're like, never again, Pop. You're not allowed to leave. And I made a pizza. That was good. That was good.
What was on the pizza?
It was my own special recipe. I've been working on it for years. It's a deep dish pizza with rosemary in the oil and a cast iron pan with our own sauce from the garden. And nice cheese and a little bit of herbs from our garden and fried eggplant.
This is a very Maine discussion that we're having here. I was very critical of the spices that you're putting in.
Yeah.
What my wife's question for you, the other boss that I have to answer to today, her question was it all worth it? You spent 87 days away from your wife and your kids. Was it worth it?
Oh yeah. I mean. $500,000 for 3 months. I mean, I could build boats for a long time, and I don't think I'd ever hit that, one. It was hard, but it was so much fun too. I mean, I did so many neat things and was in such a cool place. It's like History Channel was so cool to be, to take us there. It really we all felt really blessed and just lucky to be able to have the experience that we had.
Well, in fact, you were just telling me today that you're thinking of, not necessarily doing the same thing again. You're interested in doing something like this, right?
Right. That's one of the, and when you're all done, everybody always asks you, like, hey, would you do it again? Would you do it again? Like everybody, production crew, anybody asks you if you do it again. And my answer was always, yeah, sure. I'll come back. Those shows always, like Survivor, always have winners against winners. And I said, hey, when you got 10 winners, I'll come back. And they're like, but Alan and Dave, those guys will be really old then. I'm like, yeah, I know. Every advantage I can get, It's like, sure.
So you have $500,000. You have a 12-foot yurt in Appleton, Maine. Tell everybody where you live now.
We bought a mansion. Yeah. Well, that's what we call it because anything bigger than a yurt is a mansion. We bought a place in Union. You can see it on our YouTube channel, Fowler's Makery and Mischief. We've been vlogging about what it's like to have $500,000 and all of our experiences that has brought upon us. The adventures that's caused me to have with history, going on a Dodge Ram ad and and all the.
Well, that leads into what I wanted to kind of wrap up with, which is what are you up to now, what's going on, and give people a sense of you're hopefully not going to work in the boatyards again, so what are you going to be doing?
Yeah, I mean, I built boats because I got into that when I was 18 going to boat building school because it was something cool that I could build that kind of got me outdoors, but I never fell in love with them. I love to make stuff. Ever since I was a kid, I was breaking my parents' stuff and turning it into something else, like the calculator, and turning it into a powered Lego car, And so it's like I've always wanted to build whatever I want to build whenever I want to. And Patagonia gave me that opportunity. I was out there, and whatever I could imagine, I built it, with the stuff I had. And so now that we've won and we've got a house and the family's safe and secure, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make whatever I want to make. And from now, and that's YouTube videos, and YouTube's making it so that I can do that. And we're going to start a series soon based on, I'm going to call it 87 days. And it's going to be based on as if I did it in Maine instead of Patagonia. I'm going to go over, because you see, I was 2 hours of footage on TV, and I filmed 87 days, 12 hours a day, and slept for 12 hours a day when I was out there. So I'm going to redo, the duck hunter and show it in detail and all the different traps I used out there. I had 18 different traps. One of them was a 4 foot by 4 foot deep hole. Even though there wasn't any sign except for once of boar out there, every week I set another trap just in case so that I could be ready for that opportunity. I kept myself busy. And so I'll be doing that. Sometimes I'm trying to beat the Guinness World Record of how many cans you can knock down in a minute. I want to be on Jimmy Fallon someday.
With a slingshot, right?
With a slingshot, yes.
Yeah, okay.
With a slingshot. And so I do updates on that and just our vlog of our family's adventure after all of this.
And maybe going back out in the woods at some point.
Yeah, and sometime.
And you travel a lot now too, right? You were just telling me that he's been going to shows around the country, and it can get to be almost too much. You're out of Maine a lot.
Yeah, I just got back from 2 weeks from Texas to Pennsylvania and Atlanta for different shows, and just speaking about what I'm here.
Okay, my last question before we open it up to you guys for your questions, and this is just a little bit of trivia. And maybe it was the way they edited the show, but they referenced a mountain lion early on in the show. You were up in the hills, and then nothing else was really ever said of it again. Was there something up there? What did you see that night?
Oh yeah, he came right through my camp, and that first, I don't know, it was probably day 3, so it showed up on episode 1, down by the water checking my fissuation, and I'm seeing these eyes coming through the woods, and I'm like, and they told us there's nothing big there except for the cougars, and they are the biggest mountain lions in the world in Patagonia. And I'm like, these eyes are this far apart. I'm picturing that thing from Neverending Story stalking me, and I'm like, what in the world, And I'm back in, I got the shovel over there, but that's 10 feet away. I grabbed the camera, and I was like, because they told us you got to film it if it happens to you, otherwise it doesn't count. So I grabbed the camera, I'm backing towards the water, I'm down by the water, and he just strolled along and went by my camp and went on his merry way.
And his eyes glinted in the light. You can totally see
that's pretty much on camera. That's the only thing you can see because of the way they glinted so much.
Yeah.
And I wasn't able to I didn't really get close. And I was from here to the back window and maybe a teeniest bit closer.
I would go ahead and say that's significantly closer than I would like to be to a mountain lion at any time in my life.
But he didn't seem like he was apt to eat me. So that next day I put some bamboo across the end of my bed because I didn't want to wake up with him licking my head. And, but then I didn't worry about it after that.
I can always count on you to have an anecdote or a little something anywhere I go. All right, so that's all the tough questions I have for Fowler. I'm going to open it up to you guys. Stephanie Manning is here. She has a microphone. Just give a wave, and she will find you. And we already have our first question.
I'm going to make my way around the room, so we'll start over here.
Okay.
Just make sure your hands are up high.
I have a couple of questions for you. I have a phone in my pocket, and I'm worried about the battery's going to run dead. And you were in a sheltered, shaded area, so you didn't have solar power. How do you get power to power those cameras?
They would bring us batteries, but not we wouldn't see them. So we had a dry bag that we hung on a tree down by the water, and because you see on the show there's a gray satchel, and in that satchel was our emergency contact equipment, 3 different radios and satellite things where you could push the tap out button and it's all over for you if you hit that. And so they would know where we were at all times if we weren't moving or something like that. And so they'd know when we dropped our batteries off, and they'd come in like little ninjas and sneak in and to keep the integrity of our aloneness and swap out batteries for us, and then we'd come back and get them.
The other thing I was going to ask you is the food. I mean, if you're saving a fish, and you mentioned there's a lion in the neighborhood, aren't you never afraid of that? Maybe that's like bear bait, And
I smoked them all, and smoking it usually protects you from that. Even the biggest problem out there was actually hantavirus, and that is mice and rodents can have it, and 1 in every 4 can have it, and 1 in every 4 people that get it die from it. So you have to be very careful. So bathing yourself in smoke after you eat, washing your hands, bathing yourself in smoke again, and bathing your food in it, and keeping it. So I pretty much kept it by the fire, so it was always in a constant stream of smoke going onto it lightly.
Did you have any advanced information about the flora, fauna, or what to eat, what not to eat?
Not really, no.
No.
Because we had 3 weeks to get going, and when I tried to research it, Patagonia, every time you go over a hill there, it's a different climate because there's so many invasive species that have been introduced. The bamboo is not native there. The fish, trout, are not native there. All of that stuff is, was stuff they warned us about being there, but there really isn't any way to research it very well. There's no great survival books up until I write mine.
And the last thing I want to ask you is that you mentioned that you had a wellness check and you've been in alone and all of a sudden you have tactile contact with the outside. Just how emotional was that? And then was that the...
It was actually more annoying than anything because they're only there for a couple minutes. They make sure you're okay on your arm and
That's the blood pressure cuff you're doing there, right?
That's the blood pressure cuff and then they're gone. So
Alice, I thought you did a fabulous job and we appreciate watching the show, so thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, who else?
Pretty much asked them all, didn't he? No.
I don't know too much about the show, but how did you get chosen? What did you have to do
There's
to
a
go
boot camp.
through?
I sent in a, hey, here's my Facebook to the History Channel. Are you guys interested in having me on the show? And they're like, yeah, we're going to send you a camera because they saw all the stuff I did here in Maine at my place.
Didn't they call you like the next day?
They were like right on top of it. So I got like fast track. They sent me a camera. I went out in my snowmobile, pretended it broke down, filmed a pretend like, oh, I'm stuck in the woods. And I was like, oh no, my snowmobile broke.
This video is online. You can find it.
You can see it. They didn't put the, oh no, my snowmobile broke, but you see my making my shelter. I tapped a tree. I made a tap so I can get water out of it. I hang up a line, and I was like, yeah, I made this clothesline in my shelter so I can hang my knickers up so they dry out, and they thought that was so funny. And I ate a grub to show I had what it took, and then we go to the boot camp, and they test us against everybody else. And that's when I kind of won their hearts, because I knew it was not just about winning the show, it was about winning America's heart. So I had to, first win the producers' hearts.
All the way back here.
What did you do for water, to drinking water?
I just had that fish head soup. I'd scoop up a whole pot of it, and I'd fill it. They had all the fish heads and the bones from the last fish, and I'd boil it 3 times a day and drink it down. That way I get all the electrolytes and the minerals, and so I didn't come out mineral deficient. I was feeling really strong at the end.
Here you go.
Did you ever get so hungry that you wanted to quit?
No, it wasn't really an option. I kind of did that. We have this saying in the boatyard, nothing new. Oh, no, don't get dirty before 9:30 and nothing new after 2. So out there, I figured, I kind of kept the same concept. It's like after 2 o'clock, I was never allowed to quit, and I knew I couldn't quit before 2 o'clock because I was feeling okay, and then so it didn't come up. But after 4 o'clock every day was the hardest time because that's when you leave work, you're going home, you're with your family, you're sitting down to a family meal. Things are at its best. And so it was hard, but I wasn't allowed to make the decision, so I never thought about it.
And right here.
I'm wondering, what are your recommendations for, let's say, young adults, teenagers who are really interested in the topic of survival and tools and going out into the wilderness? What kinds of things would you recommend that they investigate to, get better at those kinds of skills?
I never did it to become a survivalist. I wanted to homestead, and so when I moved up onto my land 10 years ago and was just living out there, I'd go out on Saturdays to garage sales and get old books and study all the stuff from the old books on trapping plants around here. Sundays I'd go out and I'd spend the day out there collecting plants for my meals and just trying to learn about the outdoors, trying to make primitive traps to catch the woodchuck that's eating my garden. And then when those shows came on, Jamie and I were watching them, and I was like, I could do that. And she's like, I dare ya.
Well, but this goes to something we were talking about earlier. You think anybody can do this, don't you?
Oh, sure, yeah. I think. Yeah.
I mean, what goes into that? If people are interested, if
you're interested in it, then you can do it. I kind of think, there's some limitations, but to a degree, we have people that are, require wheelchairs and they're out BMX biking down mountainsides. If they can, find a way to do what they're passionate about, then anybody can find a way to do what they're passionate about.
Did you eat anything else beside the fish?
I had 63 fish and 2 birds, one with my bird trap and one with my slingshot, and that's the tassel from him right there. And yeah, it was around day 65, and I was out there, and I had brought the slingshot, and many people made fun of that online too, because in the end there was like no game. But every day I practiced anyways. I practiced shooting rocks, which I had never done before. I only had 30 pieces of ammo, so every day I practiced my slingshot, killing snowmen when I had snow. And then that day came along that I had that smooth rock in my pocket for the right moment, and a bird I hadn't seen in months showed up, and I had him for dinner. He tasted like chicken.
Well, weren't there some dandelions at some point?
Yeah, that's our new shirt that we have says it tastes like carrots, because that same, a day or two after or something like that, day 80 I think, or 82, I'm sitting there and I hadn't had fish for a couple days, so I had been saving these dandelion roots for a month, and I'm boiling them, and I go to eat them, and they tasted just like carrots from my garden. They were so sweet because they had been wintering over, and so I'm crying and laughing, and because they were so good. So my wife made us a T-shirt that said they taste like carrots. And right here.
He's got a few shirts to give away after we're all done. People can come up, meet him, and he's got a few shirts to give out if anybody is interested in a shirt. There's also Fowler trading cards, or baseball cards, which he has signed. So he is fully prepared to hang out. He's fully prepared to live in the woods, and he's fully prepared to socialize as well.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steph.
Yep. Did they let you know how many contestants were left as you were going along?
No, that was the other hard thing, because like the whole time I'm thinking, I didn't pick a ration as one of my items. The other people all chose at least one ration instead of one of their tools that they could have picked. And I picture them out there just like eating hamburgers every day, and like roasting a boar over the fire. And I'm like sitting there going, I'm so hungry. And then they're enjoying themselves. But it's a part of the mental game you have to defeat.
Back there?
I'm all the way back here in the corner.
Thank you. So we've heard how it changed your life. Is your wife going to do something? Is she going to do something like it? Has it changed her?
We set her up to do what she wanted to do, which was she's always wanted to be a fiber artist. And so I've invested in my wife's fiber art studio. One of my things I promised her, I'd build her a she shed. And so when we got the house, I was like, there's your she shed, So we got a big old farmhouse, and she's got a great little studio in there with all the yarns, and she's been doing fiber arts and selling them at the Union Farmers Market and starting to sell them online and stuff. And she's such an artist. She's the one that made my hats for the show and a lot of our kids' clothes and stuff over the years. Yeah, so she's really psyched.
Okay.
How did you keep track of time, especially on days when it was overcast or rainy?
The time problem, it wasn't a big deal, I was asleep for 12 hours and awake for 12 hours, and this told me everything else I needed to know. I had that every day, and then Sundays I had a bigger mark, so I knew exactly what day of the week it was when it was over. I hadn't lost track of time.
But on an hour-to-hour basis?
An hour-to-hour basis, we get the cameras, and you're filming yourself all the time, so you could always check the timestamp. And they wanted to get rid of that, actually, but there was no way to, so.
Great question.
All right, I'm in the back again over here.
Oh, okay.
So now, because I have the mic, I'm going to ask two. One is, was there a tool that you were most envious of when you saw what other people
that's
had
a good
brought?
question.
And also then question number two is what was the thing that you were the most afraid of, or was there a thing that was your biggest fear during the experience?
Those are two very good questions.
Yeah. My biggest fear was choking on a fishbone and having to leave because of it, just because of something my grandma had told me when I was a kid. And what was the first one?
But ridiculous stuff happened all the time on that show. Somebody tripped and cut themselves, and they were gone,
and they were out. But that was my ridiculous thing.
Yeah. Well, sorry. What was your first question about the items?
If there was a tool.
The tool.
Jealousy.
Like when I first got there was like I thought, man, I totally screwed up because like my technique was homesteading the situation, and about homesteading is you're going out west, and I was picturing the caravan of wagons, and I was like, man, you don't stop at the most miserable place possible, and you always bring rations, and I'm like, everybody else brought rations, and I'm stuck here at the most miserable place possible, At least that's how I felt initially until I found my spot to build my shelter up over the hill. And I was like, man, I totally flopped on that one. And so I was so jealous that, and just kept picturing them eating like day in and day out, 3 meals a day with this tiny ration, which was not it couldn't last that long. But
It's amazing how everybody expects it to be torture for you, but I can tell all you guys after spending hours hanging out with Fowler over beers that this was not torture for you. It was. I mean, you didn't love doing it, but what was your?
I loved doing it, but when day 50 hit, it was like I thought to myself, this could be over at any time and I'd be happy, But I still had a good time from there on out. But it's hard sometimes to have a good time when you're missing your family, But they were the reason I was doing it. So they were like the awesomest thing about doing it and the bane of my existence out there, and the reason I didn't have more fun, which would have been hard to have more fun than I had.
You had plenty. We a couple more back here? Yeah, just a couple more. Okay.
For navigating to and from your base camp, can you tell us why you didn't select a compass as one of your 10 items?
We only had like 5 to 10 square miles, and our locator would beep if we had gone out of that, and that was part of it. There wasn't even a compass, I don't think, on the list that you could choose, because had you gotten lost, you'd have to hit your tap out button, and you would show that you were unable to survive, and they'd come and take you away.
And let me just point out that they had that rule about not leaving your zone because they didn't want you collaborating with the person at the next
but
they were all fairly close.
We were close enough that it was, but not close enough you could either see or really hear the other person. So we had no idea how close we actually were until after.
Okay.
All right, we're going to do 2 more. Is that all right?
2 more?
Yep.
Okay.
Hi.
And then people are welcome to stick around after. Go ahead, sorry.
No problem. You joked earlier that the extra weight that you were carrying around was kind of like an extra item, and you said that you actually lost about 70 pounds. I'm curious, do you think you could have lasted as long if you hadn't had that extra weight at the start of the show?
When I was done, my BMI was at normal. So I did some calculations, and with the amount of weight that I had, I lost about 40 pounds of body fat and about 30 pounds of muscle. And that muscle and body fat gave me energy combined with the fish. You could never do it just on body fat and stuff because you just go insane. But just living off your own body consume itself. And it was what made it possible. And I did some more calculations, and I think that I still had at least 20 to 30 days before I would have reached a low enough BMI that they would have pulled me. So that's about where I stood with time-wise out there. And I had chose to live a life out there that consumed a lot of calories, where they showed us, Dan and I kind of opposed each other, where he chose to do as little as possible. He did what he needed to, so he had a comfortable shelter and he had firewood, but he didn't go like traipsing around like I did all the time, or build his shelter ridiculously far away. But those were things I felt I didn't have a choice about.
And then you got a lot more screen time as a result of that, too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last question.
Yeah, we're right here.
Okay.
Was each person's location just kind of luck of the draw? And then going back and seeing where everybody else got dropped off, did you feel like you got a raw deal and you would have liked to have been dropped off in a different location?
No, I didn't. No, because I liked my place in the end. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I had the bamboo, which made this awesome shelter. It was like bomb-proof. It was so beautiful. And, and I had all those fish. I had twice as many fish, almost more than as everybody else. And, I had that ray of sunshine every so often. And one time I even had a rainbow. And it was awesome, So I loved it.
All right, everybody. I want to invite everybody to stick around, and I want to invite everybody to applaud for Mr.